Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Good evening. Gentlemen, start your engines. The Pickens County Republican Club would like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. Thank you very much. We always start with a prayer, or in this case, a quote in a prayer. The quote is from the first Republican, Abraham Lincoln. Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. If you'll pray with me. Dear Lord, please bless our community, our state, and our country. We pray that you would always give us the guidance necessary to always be on your side. Amen. If you'll join me to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Yeah, I got it. We are an auxiliary group of the South Carolina Republican Party. We are sanctioned by the SCGOP. And as such, it's appropriate to read the South Carolina Republican Creed. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I seek opportunity, not security, I want to take the calculated risk to dream and build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for dole. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed security, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for beneficence, nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master save my God. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, to face the whole world boldly and say, I am a free American. Well, we always try to recognize elected officials and candidates running for office. Chris Clark is here, City Council. Inslee Feimster is sitting right here, an old friend of ours, who is a former member of the County Council, and I believe is going to be on the ballot this year will be on the ballot this November, or in June. Will be on the ballot in the primary for County Council again. Jason, where are you? Jason Dennis, sitting in the back. He is on the ballot to be Blue Ridge Electric Co-op Board of Directors. People who serve on the utility boards like this represent the people in the community, so it is an important position. Anyway, shake hands with Dennis and get to know him, especially if you get your utilities from Blue Ridge. Anybody else? Anybody I missed other than the guy sitting up here? The video of this event will be available on our Facebook page, Pickens County Republican Club, tomorrow. And we invite you to follow the page and keep up with us and what's going on. And you can find upcoming events there. And keep up with what we're up to. We have a sign-up sheet over by the door. If you would like to give us your email address, I'll send you an email to let you know when as things come up, we'll send out emails and let you know what's going on. And if you think we're worthy and you think what we do is worthwhile, if you'd like to drop $1 or $2 in the donation box, we'd appreciate it. There's just like 4 or 5 of us that do this, and we do everything out of our own pockets. And the money would be spent on what you see here, nothing else. Either that, or if we all kick the bucket tomorrow, the money will go to charity. We're not going to spend it on gas money to go to anywhere. Anyway, so to the business at hand.
Before you move on, if you don't mind, everybody here should know that Rick and John were the very first to telecast an event like this back in 2012. They did a series of these things back then. It was probably the fairest, most national events we've ever had. And John here has been a stand-up guy to do this for free for more organizations in the county than you could shake a stick at. So, I mean, it doesn't look like an IT professional over here. You kind of expect a 22-year-old, right? But he's got 5 22-year-olds built in there.
Yeah.
So you guys know what they're doing right here is yeoman's work. It's very difficult, very few like thank yous, and they do it absolutely for free. So Rick and John, because you have to recognize yourself, this is the kind of folks that are the backbone of politics, right?
Thank you. I feel very humbled, and I'm always glad to see John sitting back there at NASA Control. Yeah. But back to, thank you, Henry. And that's Henry Wilson, formerly of the Pickens County Council. He served as an elected official here in Pickens County.
I was on the school board, I think.
And school board. And school board. He served both. So, Agriculture Commissioner. Let me give you guys, if you don't know, I didn't. I admit ignorance on this. Let me give you a short tutorial on what the job is. Just a couple of paragraphs. The South Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture leads the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, responsible for promoting agribusiness, ensuring food safety, and regulating weights and measures. Key duties include certified SC grown marketing, inspecting farms and retail food establishments, regulating gas pumps, and supporting farmers. Elected to a 4-year term, the Commissioner acts as a major advocate for the state's roughly $51.8 billion agriculture industry. Additionally, the Commissioner of Agriculture oversees approximately 250 full-time employees at the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. So it's not a small job. It's a large undertaking. And I appreciate you guys coming out tonight to make an informed decision on how you cast your ballot. So, what we're doing tonight, the way we're going to do it, is each person, each candidate gets to introduce themselves. They get a 3-minute introduction. And then I had them submit to me 3 questions each. So they are questioning one another. If I'm going to call it a debate, I thought we needed to at least have it a little bit like that. I don't think it's a debate otherwise. Anyway, so they each get 3 minutes to answer each question. And at the end, they get 5 minutes for closing remarks. And if anyone mentions any of the other candidates by name, the person that is mentioned by name gets 3 minutes at the end for rebuttal if that happens. I learned my lesson the hard way on not giving somebody a chance to get in to be able to respond. So, gentlemen, they drew numbers, and it was Danny number 1, Jeremy 2, and Fred 3. So, first question will go to Danny. And
gentlemen, I am your timekeeper.
Oh, I'm sorry. I told them before.
That's all right.
And so everybody will understand. Bonnie's the timekeeper. When you get 30 seconds.
Is a yellow card. When your time is up, I'll show you the yellow card. That means, or the red card, I'm sorry, that means done.
Thank you, Bonnie, for not letting me mess that up. Okay. So, get all these papers shuffled around here. And just because of the way that we're laying up here, no particular order, it doesn't make any difference because we're going to get to all 9 questions before the end anyway. But Danny, the first one is from Fred.
How about introductions?
Pardon?
Introductions.
Oh, yeah.
They forgot last night too, so. We're all.
I was so anxious to get to the questions, I forgot the introduction. Danny, it's your turn to speak.
Danny Lee Ford II. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina. Lived here, went to Pendleton High School. Spent a little time in Arkansas, but moved back here and started high school rodeoing. Got dropped off at the veterinarian's office up the road. A lot of you know him, Poe Greed, and spent probably 15 years there. And he made sure that I saw every situation that he had to deal with, especially the tough ones. Was very successful in high school rodeo, went to nationals, ended up going collegiate and professional horse training, and came home. We we're one of the first hemp farmers in the state. I have a 180,000 square foot of greenhouse in Travelers Rest, and we have a 200-acre farm in Pendleton. We have done cows, hay, ornamentals. We farmed about anything that you can farm. And, you know, what I've seen over the last 2-3 years is it's getting increasingly harder to farm in the state of South Carolina. So that's really why I'm running. Want to bring awareness to that and want to try to help fix the situation and fight for the farmers. We had a thing happen last year. It was one of the biggest environmental disasters in the upstate that a lot of people don't know was Helene up in North Carolina washed a lot of water or a lot of silt down in our waterways. And we're just through the last year understanding what that did and dealing with the problems for that. So like to bring awareness to that. Went through the process of doing different programs through the USDA and had trouble. Every time I turned around, I didn't think that there were programs developed for people that were going through my situation. So that's a lot of my drive, is to take these experiences that I've dealt with in my whole life and really help the farmer be successful. You know, we've really seen convenience as a factor in our society, and we're paying for convenience now, and our kids will pay for it in the future. You know, what we're doing right now is a dangerous game. Depending on other countries for our food, depending on other states, we need to produce that right here in South Carolina and be self-sufficient as much as we can for the next generation. Right now, the average age of the farmer is 60. 35 and under is 9%. So we have a lot of work to do to get this information that our older generation has and get it to these kids, because they're not going to know how to get through this red tape. I was taught by good old boys and knew really how to get in and out of it. They're not going to know how to do that. Right now, land's $30,000 an acre. You can't graduate from a college and go think you're going to farm. So that's going to change. It's going to need to.
All right, I'm Jeremy Cannon. I'm from Tuberville, South Carolina. It's Clarendon County, northern part of the county. We're about 25 minutes south of Florence, in case you're wondering, off of I-95. It's a speed trap town, or that's what it was growing up. That's how we paid our bills. You know, we had 800 people there when I graduated high school, and we had 4 town cops. So, go figure. But that's where I grew up, and other than the speed trap, we were an ag community. We still are. Obviously, it's consolidated a good bit. We farm roughly 1,200 acres. We were big in tobacco. That's what paid the bills east of Columbia for many families, and that was our cash crop. We farmed corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, peanuts, but that was all for rotation, just so we could have enough land to put tobacco on. Well, I'm back a little bit, tell you about my family. I'll get back to that. I've been married 22 years to my wife, Lacey. We have a miracle child, Blaine, who is 16, and that's a story that would take another night. But I'm willing to share it with all of you because God has blessed us beyond measure with our son. Redhead, blue eyes, unique individual, but he is a blessing to us. And they would be here, but Blaine has got a sinus infection, and Lacey is battling her first kidney stone. So that's a no good. I'm one and done, hopefully. Knock on wood. I've had one, and I don't wish it on my worst enemies. But she's a trooper, and she's had a baby, so she's tough. So, so my biggest issue is back in 22, we got out of tobacco. And we transitioned into produce. We started growing different things for 30 years up to 2015. We had pickled cucumbers. We were growing them for Bay Valley Foods, was the last buyer. They left in 2015, but that was, other than tobacco, it was our cash crop, our second cash crop. Corn and soybeans were nothing. You start talking about $1.78 corn, and who knows what the beans were, $5, $6. They were rough. So, but pickles were good, and we felt like we had that experience when we started weaning off of the tobacco. We started growing produce. If you can grow cucumbers for process and you can grow them for fresh market. So we planted cucumbers for fresh market one year. We definitely knew how to do it. That was a quick clock, but anyway. So, but we kept adding everything. We can grow cucumbers, you can grow squash, zucchini. Now we grow over 20 items, 30 items sometimes, but we also grow Angus cattle at a farm. And I'm running because we don't have a voice in Columbia. Found that out in 2015. We'll hopefully get to talk about that later.
My name is Fred West, a lifelong South Carolinian, born here, actually in the upstate area. Grew up in what I would kind of call a tough family situation. So as a high schooler, I knew what it was like to be hungry, and I knew what it was like to not know where we were going to sleep. Decided I wanted to get into college by the hair of my chinny chin chin. I got into the University of South Carolina by the hair of my chinny chin chin. I got out of the University of South Carolina, worked myself through college, met my wife, Michelle. She's back there with a phone in her hand, taking videos and pictures. We've been married for 36 years. And I could say, we've been campaigning since last January, so we've spent a lot of time together traveling all over the state. And one thing that's interesting is what you start to pick up as you do this. And when we think about our timekeeper and the yellow card and the red card, she now has a yellow card and a red card for me. So she'll give me 30 minutes, you talk 30 more minutes, and then she'll tell me to stop. So she's learning things as we do this. We have 2 kids. I've got a son who is a chief resident at a hospital in Oxford, Mississippi, getting ready to finish that, and he'll come to Wilmington, North Carolina. They've got a hospital there. My daughter works for an association nonprofit that specializes in psychology. She has her graduate degree in psychology. I'm an elder at Rivercrest Presbyterian Church in Lexington, South Carolina, and we live in Batesburg, Leesville. My career, if I think about it, the best way to kind of break it down was I was not born in ag. I wish I had been, but I was not born into it, did not grow up in it. Got out of school, had a job in the computer industry doing some HR stuff. Went to work for Ryan's Family Steakhouses. People up here probably remember Ryan's. The yeast rolls are really what I miss the most. This was in the heyday of Ryan, so I handled the HR for the Southeast, all the way from Virginia to Georgia to Tennessee. I had a friend call me and said, I want you to go talk to Amick Farms about being a VP of HR. And I said, what is Amick Farms? And he said, it's a poultry processing company. I literally said the words, I ain't working for no chicken plant. And he said, look, go talk to him. Just go talk to him. So I went and talked to him and got to meet the Amick family, got to meet the other executives, and took the job. And 24 and a half years later, I look back on that moment in my life. There's sometimes you just look back and realize that the opportunity that was put before me, the change it did for my life and my career and the way I could raise my family compared to the way I was raised. So I started off as VP of HR, but through the years took on everything from leading IT, engineering, quality, food safety, regulatory affairs, legal. I ran the processing plants for a time as we grew. I ran the live operations where you're actually growing the birds, and then I was on the mergers and acquisition team. I would say this, the reason I'm running, I was able to retire 3 years ago at 59. Never thought I could ever retire. I have a debt to pay, and that debt is to South Carolina agriculture. It was that good to me, that good to my family. It gave me opportunities. I wasn't from a good family. I didn't go to Yale. I knew how to work hard, but it gave me chances that I never would have gotten in any other industry, and that's why I want to give back.
Okay, gentlemen, now to the questions. And Danny, you get the first one, and it's from Fred. What executive leadership experience do you have managing large teams and complex organizations, including the size, scope, and style of your leadership?
Yeah, like I said, we got a 180,000 square foot greenhouse up in TR. It's a little bit over 3.5 acres under roof. We've had up to 20 employees on a really, really good year. It's not like that anymore, unfortunately. But, they got a good team down there. I think it needs some direction. I like Clint Leach, like Derek Underwood, know those guys real well. Expressed wanting to run, talk to them, and they say they'll work for me and try to make me as successful as they can, and I believe them. And none of us running have ever ran or been elected by the public, so it's going to be new to all of us. But those guys know how to get in and out, what the deal is. They just need the direction from the leader, and that's what I plan to bring to it. Tell them exactly what I want for our state, and that's, to buy local and to really have community cohesion to move to supporting our farmers. And that's not what we're doing right now. This food is getting brought in from out of state and shipped in and out, frozen, you know, it's filled with preservatives. We're driving right past some of the best or food in the state to get to the grocery store. So one thing that I'd like to do, and that is have the app that lists every roadside stand and market actually list a live inventory and wants for the consumers. So you can see what your neighbors have for sale. Right now, it's very hard on us to be able to market every single thing, and we need help from our government entities, just like the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, to be able to bring this to our community. And we need our community to let us know what they expect from us so we can stop speculating January 1st at every year. It's a huge problem. There's a lot of waste, and there's a lot of competition with the big four seed companies and packers. And so I'd really like to see our state get back to that. I'd also like to see a South Carolina distribution plant set up so that our farmers have a way to move their product across the state, and these small farms can actually have a seat at the table.
Jeremy, would you like me to repeat the question?
I would, please.
Not a problem. What executive leadership experience do you have managing large teams and complex organizations, including the size, scope, and style of your leadership?
All right, well, I had two examples. I'm trying to decide which one was meant the most, but I guess I'll start with I've been chairman of the board at our church. Well, if you can get 18 people at a church to agree on anything, on vision and scope and work and how to spend the money, and I say that has been the greatest challenge, but it's also greatest experience and greatest privilege I've ever had is to serve as chairman of the Deacon Board, which is chairman of our board at our church for multiple terms. That was a blessing, but yeah, all those people are unique individuals, and all of them have different things that they feel like are important, and I feel like that is very similar to our Department of Ag. That's one thing I've noticed throughout traveling in the ag world, in our state, in the timber industry. Everyone, we found it out last night how important the equine industry was to some individuals, and that's not necessarily the case at home, but we saw it in Kershaw County last night. So, you know, Department of Ag is very unique, and it is wide. The scope is huge. There's a lot of different parts, a lot of different pieces, and all of them have each division, and it's important to them. So I felt that in our church, but also I feel that on our farm. You know, I've been managing the farm since I got out of school in 2003 from USC with a business management degree. I thought it was ridiculous at the time, but I'm amazed at how much I use business management on the farm. But being able to do those things, we've worked as many as 70 people on our farm before. Most summers we run somewhere between 20 and 30 employees. I worked kids with disabilities. Just kids in general. You want to find something unique and difficult. You work some teenagers with all their thoughts and hormones and everything else, and maybe they weren't raised like we were, like my generation and the ones before. They didn't have a drill sergeant dad. He was out the Army, so I caught it, a little bit growing up. So, but I learned work ethic. I learned what it was about, but I've been able to work kids, work disabled. I work veterans. So I worked a wide range of people, wide range of backgrounds, people from local all the way from. I've worked people from Wisconsin, and just moved down. Some of the transplants after they retired came down looking for something quick to do. So I feel like my experience of working people on the farm and also working with individuals in a church setting on the board prepares me for this job.
Fred?
So if I think about Amick Farms, when I first started 26 years ago, we were one plant, one shift, probably about 600 people. And when I left, we were 3 plants in 3 states, 3,500 employees. We were processing 4 million birds a week, and we were almost a $2 billion a year sales company. And what's interesting to look back at that is to see how your leadership has to change as you grow. One of the difficult things that you learned very quickly is you're not going to be able to make every decision. You can't be involved in every decision. As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder. You take that and you recognize that a business, and even the Department of Ag, the way it's set up in the various pieces and parts, that some of them don't really naturally fit together. So you've got these silos. In business, they call them silos. So, for example, in chicken, you have the silo of processing, and the silo of live operations, and the silo of engineering. And you've got to be really gifted as an executive to drop in those silos to make sure you understand what their needs are, what their wishes are, what their problems are. But in the end, you have to be able to pull all those silos back together for the betterment of the organization. Now, one of the key things I think when you start to move up the ladder, I've had thousands of people that I was responsible for. And typically with a business, as you get bigger, you typically have, my kind of direct reports were probably 30 people, and then they had 30 people, and then they had 30 people, and then that's just kind of how that kind of grows. One of the things that you learn to do well is you can't expect people to read minds, right? You want them to anticipate what you would do and to know kind of your style of what you want to do, because the body follows the head. That's just true. So the leader really does have an unspoken impact on everybody that's making those decisions. So I think the key for me was always to be present where it mattered. So, AMIC and chicken and ag in general, you'll hear this from my friends over here. You're not sitting in an office. You are out about around people, around processes, around customers, around agencies that you're having to deal with, so that you have an opportunity as a leader to really show people this is how I would handle that. You're teaching all the time, but it's not a classroom kind of teaching. It's a going through stuff. There's very, very rarely do you deal with something that is a classic textbook situation in business. It doesn't. And as you go up the ladder and become an executive, it gets even harder because the textbook stuff is being handled at a lower level. Black and white stuff gets handled by a guy that says, well, the policy says this. But as you move up that ladder, it gets grayer, it gets harder, it gets more difficult. So you've got to be a leader that people can anticipate what you're thinking. They know kind of your standards of what you're doing.
The next question, we'll start with Jeremy, and it is from Danny. With cattle numbers down 1 million head in the U.S., what will you do to bolster livestock and bring more cattle farmers to South Carolina?
Well, I am a cattle guy. I have 28 head of Angus cattle. I'm not going to apologize. I believe Angus is the best. We can argue after this meeting if you'd like to, but that's the way I was raised. I've really enjoyed working with cattle. I had a few guys asking why I didn't get hogs or goats, and I was like, I don't know what they're thinking. I think I know what a cow's thinking, and I know it can kill me, but I feel like I'll understand them, and I love having them, love working them. The cow numbers here, I think, is closely related to productivity and return. I think if we could make, cattle more profitable here, if we can work on infrastructure and markets, ways that we can sell our cattle here. Well, one thing that we have issue with is getting them processed. We have very few USDA facilities able to put a stamp on it. One of them is, thankfully, 20 minutes from home. We go to Williamsburg packing with our beef. We feed them out to $12.50, $13.50, and we carry them there. But the problem is they only kill 10 a week, always on Friday. That's the only days they can kill. And then there's some days they don't kill but 5 or maybe 3. And they don't kill any from mid-November till January 1st because they're so big in pork for barbecues. Now, I love barbecue. I'm not arguing with it, but it does hurt us when I have cattle that's needing to be killed and I can't get a date. Like right now, we were sitting out, we're probably at least 120 days on our next cattle that we can kill. So that, cows don't wait on an opening, on an appointment. They don't say, well, I'm not going to gain weight this month since you don't have a date. So we need some facilities. We need to spend some money here at home. I don't care for us shipping cows out of state through the feed yards or through the stock yards to a feed yard in the Midwest and bringing back in beef that who knows where it came from. I mean, we can't even promise you it came from the United States. the labeling issue is an issue. You know, well, as long as it's packaged in the United States, you can put product of USA on it. How ridiculous is that? So I think if we can, you know, we got to spend some money here at home. We got to invest here at home. We got to invest in processing facilities. We got to take away some of this red tape that's keeping them from building facilities. My uncle was a butcher growing up. He and Daddy fed out hogs and cows there at home, and they were killing it. The shed there across the road from the house is still standing. We still got a meat cooler there. We can still kill for ourselves, but we can't sell it. So, there's a lot of red tape that came through in the 80s and kept them from expanding and doing what it needed to be. Now, obviously, hindsight is 2020, wish they had changed, but that's what I'm going to work on.
Fred, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. The way I would characterize this is we don't have, and this is in general, this isn't just about cattle, we don't have a farming problem in this state. We've got some of the best farmers and cattlemen in the nation. We have a business problem, a markets problem, a processing problem. So I look at what this state has done well. We've recruited planes, trains, and automobiles, right? Your Boeings, BMWs, your battery plants, your tire plants. Those are wonderful blessings, not knocking them. As commissioner, I want to be that good at recruiting agribusiness to this state. And agribusiness includes not only that next level of processing, but also food companies that may value add to that process. The demand for local beef is shocking. I mean, even the school system right now is begging for South Carolina beef products. And we can't get it to them because we don't have that processing capability here in the state. So as a commissioner, what I would want to do is number one, want to visit with our legacy companies, our companies here, right? The ones that are already in business, and say, what do you need? What do you want? What do you wish for? What would you do to be able to grow? What would that take to be able to grow? Which again, takes some money. We got 3 years ago, we got about $40 million from the General Assembly for an ag economic development fund. And I'm gonna be honest with you, $40 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you're building a plant, our plant's like a chicken plant's, $300 million. It's a big number. So I think we've got to be much more aggressive about getting assistance here, but also if we can't grow it here, we go get it from someplace else. We're a great place to live. We're the number 1, number 2, number 3 state in the nation. People are coming here. They want to come here. And there's a reason, because it's just a great way of life. So I would want to be that recruiter that really goes. Amick, when we bought the other 2 plants, so we started off with 1, we bought 2. We probably looked at 8 through the years. And it was always fascinating to me. I was one of the guys that would go in first to talk to the commissioner and the senators and the House of Rep guys and the town and the cities. The thing that was fascinating is some places were really good at recruiting and some places were horrible at it. And what I mean by really good recruiting, again, it's not all economic development dollars. Dollars have to math, right? Math has to math to make that work. What was more important when I was sitting there thinking about investing $100 million in a plant in another state was, do they want me? Do they need me? Are they going to be there for me down the road? And that was pretty key, because you're not leaving in a year. You're not leaving in 2 years. So I think what I see that's important as the next commissioner is to build those relationships within the industry. To know who to go after, to talk to our cattlemen here in the state and find out who would you want to come here, and then go after them and just be relational and be persistent about trying to get them here.
Danny?
So it starts off, we've got the screwworm problem right now in Mexico, so we're not bringing any more cows over from Mexico right now. That used to be really big for us to bring M-branded steers over and feed them in our feed yards, so that's not happening. So how we get South Carolina more cows, we have a tax break for our farmers to retain their heifers, starting off. Number 2, you have got to have USDA prime graded beef in South Carolina. The fact that these farmers are not able to get that service has them at a $4 disadvantage right off the top in the state of South Carolina. Our farmers, our kids need a level playing field, and that's not what they have right now. So those are the first couple things I'd do. You turn around and talk about cows, it's not just beef, boys and girls, it is dairy. Our dairies are 18 strong in the state of South Carolina. They have been run out of business. That's the first people that need to produce for our schools. They need to be bringing whole, fresh milk to our schools and our children to keep them healthy. They just talked about it at the White House and put an executive order in place. It's prime time for it, but it's hard for us to understand where that milk is. There's nothing out there that says this farm's got milk, that farm's got milk. All it is that farmer marketing their product. So how much milk they sell in a year is directly correlated with how good of a marketer they are. Traditionally, farmers are not great marketers. We need help with that. I'll take help with it all day. You know, I have seen guys out there that are very proficient and blessed at it. I'm not, you know, but the app where someone can list milk, list grade A prime beef on there, and all their neighbors see what they've got, I think that's a huge advantage. You know, we have to compete with convenience. Right now we're competing with the major four, and, you know, they're going to beat us every time. So I'll go to fight against those. I'll bring South Carolina beef back to South Carolina, and I'll put in place mobile processors. Fred's absolutely right. Some of these big places out there, they are a lot of money, but we don't need big places. We need some small ones to run around and produce for our farmers. I've seen it out in Colorado. I've seen it in a lot of different states. It works very well, and it's not working for us here. They make it increasingly hard for us to get beef to the consumer. Right now, we have to turn around and sell whole cows to people that have no want in owning a cow. All they want is beef. They don't want a half a beef. They don't want a quarter beef. They want a steak. They want what they can afford now. It's so out of sight. They can't go afford all that. They don't have the freezer space. It goes on and on and on. So I know the problems in the cow business, and that'll be one of the first things that I'll fix.
So Fred, I believe we're starting with you. You get Jeremy's first question. What is your plan to help the small beginning farmers?
The interesting dynamic you see is right now, just to kind of talk about where we're at as far as ag goes, we're in a crossroads to where it's a crisis. I mean, farmers are barely surviving. When you look at a young person or a person that wasn't born into ag, wasn't blessed with that, basically wants to get into ag, the hurdle to get over is so financially big. It's almost impossible. Now, it can happen, but it's almost impossible. So there's a couple things I would point to. The first thing I would say is the best thing we can do to create opportunities to enter the market is to make sure that the market is prospering. Right? Farmers need to prosper. It solves a lot of problems. I learned from growing up in a tough situation and then actually being in a blessed situation, prosperity solves a lot of things. It's a better place to be. So I think we've got to work on the whole piece of what we're doing and help farmers prosper. One piece of that would be that recruiting piece to get processing here. So it's not just cattle, but you look at row crops, you look at timber. We've seen in the last 3 or 4 years a massive reduction in processing capabilities in our state. Massive. I don't think it's ever happened in this state this way. So we've really had just a decimation of that opportunity to sell your products here in the state. Now, what does that do for a young person trying to get into it? It's funny with banks, and I was talking to a friend earlier about this. You know, banks look at a chicken operation, you know, your average chicken farm, because we do independent contractors that build their houses, they grow the birds for the contractors. Those are typically $1 million, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, depends on what you're building, but it's a big number. Now, the banks, honestly, are risk managers. They are assessing risk and saying, all right, if this is a low risk, we'll loan money on it and feel good about it. If it's a high risk, we're going to be much tighter about who and what can get that money. So as we increase opportunities on farms that they're prospering, the banks will know they've got something good, consistent that's going to be there. Chicken, the good thing about chicken is it's a good, constant flow through a given year, and that's why banks like it. So that work on creating prosperity will actually create an opportunity to where new people coming in will have opportunities to get financing. Now, it's still a big number, and you know, I'm a big believer in the conservation banks. I think those things are great. There are times you see generational farmers, and the next generation doesn't want to come back to the farm. Right? It might not be because they don't see a prosperous business. It might just be they're not into agriculture or get pulled into something else. I want to be able to make those connections with those groups, with the people who are trying to get into it, and build a relationship that they can work on the farm. Maybe rent a piece of the farm or lease a piece of the farm and kind of grow into being able to afford something. It's going to take time. And, you know, again, the cost of acreage now isn't just because we're a good state. It's because the development that's going on is just huge, and it really adds up.
Danny?
Yeah, I missed a good opportunity in the introduction. I'm married and have a 1 and a 4-year-old. And my 4-year-old looked at me a couple months ago and said, I want to be a farmer. And I don't want him to be a farmer. The suicide rate is 3.5 times the national average. I'd rather him find something else to do, something where he can live a nice, happy life. So what's the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fix the suicide rate. I'm going to put things in place, have a hotline where they can call. I mean, there is only a Farm Bureau number right now where they can call, and they say it's getting beat up like you wouldn't believe from farmers' mental health and suicide rates. So the other thing that I would really push for is programs for these kids. It's just like high school rodeo. It's huge in South Carolina. I'm a victor of it. I came up through the ranks, and hey, when it came time for me to go be a part of college rodeo, I had to leave the state. Our kids cannot leave the state for agriculture. They need the same opportunities here that they have all over the country. So I hate that, and I want to talk to these colleges. They're getting to where they got vet schools, have block and bridle, they have different things, but they need a rodeo team. They need to where if these kids are coming through these programs, 4-H, FFA, and they are building that fire inside of them, we don't need to do anything to put it out. We have to keep it building and keep them interested in farming. The cost of land is out of sight. It's $30,000 an acre. You cannot go to school and come farm corn or beef on $30,000 an acre. There's 12,000 acres of solar panels going in Kingstree right now, zoned for it. There's about 4,300 that's gone in. Then you have the data centers. You have the went up and talked to them about the Phylos with the Duke power plant up there that data centers will follow. They're giving them tax breaks. They're charging our farmers time and a half, peak rates, when they're trying to farm chickens or greenhouses or cotton gins. I mean, we can't turn that off because it's a bad time. We have to keep producing. So if we're going to give these major corporations tax breaks, then we have to look at our farmers and turn around and give them the breaks that they need to be able to produce. They have cut us down from such a slim margin. And then fuel goes up. Tariffs come in play. Some little thing that we battle ends up putting us out of business and making us go from profitable and producing more to losing. So it can't be a losing game if we want these kids to be involved. It's just, to think of it right now and to think of my kid getting involved, it just really, really scares me. And nobody's thinking 10 years down the road. We have to think 10 years down the road. We have to put government land where kids can have opportunity. You know, that's out there. But the last thing we can do is put solar panels on it. In 10 years, it'd be gone.
Well, I have 3 different scenarios. The first one is that I have a son. Obviously, his name is Blaine. He is a junior. He is like me in every way. There's no doubt that, you know, when you look at him, anybody talk to him does not know me, but does not know him. But if they knew me growing up, they would have no doubt knowing who he was. He's Jeremy's boy. But the only difference between he and I is he doesn't want to farm. To some extent, that is difficult, knowing that I am a 4th-generation farmer. It is a farm that I grew up on. It is land where my dad was born in 1940. There's just a lot of heritage there. Him and his brother farmed there after moving all across 3 or 4 counties, sharecropping, working the back of land, just trying to find work with anybody they could. And they ended up there, what I would call the home place, in 66. So that place is special to me. And just knowing that my kid doesn't want to farm is hard. But in the same sentence, I would say the fact that he doesn't want to farm is somewhat relieving. But he doesn't want to farm because he's seen the hardships that our family has endured, especially for the last 10 years. Y'all had Helene up here. We had the flood in 2015. We had 27 inches at home in 3 days. And that was over that we were considered ground zero. And since then, it's just been one thing after another. We had flood, hurricane. We had a brief break in 17, if you want to call it a break, and then we had another hurricane in 18. So, and then we've had drought. We've had, in 2021, we've had no hurricanes, but we had the most rainfall in the calendar year that we've ever had. So, but didn't qualify for disaster because of the way things work. But we had 5 out of 6 crops that did file for insurance. So it was just a difficult time. But he's seen that, and he doesn't want to farm. But I get it, because he saw how hard it is for our families, and without the support needed from our government. We have not had the backing of our farmer. So on the other side is his best friend who farms with me, and he wants to farm. He said, Jeremy, I want to farm, I just don't know how to get there. And his grandparents were farmers. We actually farm his grandparents' land. But I've tried. I've actually helped 2 kids in the last 10 years sell some crops in their name, try to get them established. But for some, the pressure was just too much. It is hard. It's hard when you're borrowing money, when you're selling, and you have a disaster. But we're going to have to create markets where we can sell stuff for a profit. We need to do the same thing they're doing with 4-H and showing animals. We need to be able to grow crops, and let's offer them up for a bid where they can earn something and feel like they've done something profit and bring them back to the farm.
Excuse me just a second. My IT guy back there at NASA Central says I need to trade microphones. You give you this one and take this one. Maybe we get rid of that crackling in the PA system. So now, I believe we go back to starting with Danny with this question, and this is from Fred. What direct experience do you have working with or within government agencies, and how have you led on regulatory compliance and legal issues that impact industries like agriculture?
I was the first hemp farmer in South Carolina. A lot of people don't know that November, there was a continuing resolution that came out that in 365 days, we have to shut our door. We don't participate in THCA. We don't participate in anything but CBD oil and small plants. When we first were selected, we were introduced to a very special group of Down syndrome children, epilepsy, autism, and they all found some sort of relief from this product. And when the continuing resolution came up, first thing I did the day after the government opened was went to Lindsey Graham's office right in Pendleton, South Carolina. I got a meeting set up with him and about 6 families right here in Easley Town Hall. We met with him. They expressed themselves, everything about it, what they needed, how they didn't like suicidal ideology, through the prescription meds, different things that they could not handle going to. They expressed how if they had a problem in shipping, that they would literally be picking their child up off the floor and not being able to go out in society because they were held in the house. And when I had heard that, it touched me, and I left Lindsey Graham's office and I went straight to Washington. And I met with every senator and representative up there that would meet with me, and a pretty good bit of them. Was I successful? Not hardly, and that's part of the reason I'm running, because I've tried to reach these government agencies. I've tried to be a part of this broken system. I've gone to Columbia and lobbied. I've done all this different stuff. They don't listen. They don't listen to farmers especially. When I saw how they treated this special group of kids that did not have a voice, it made all my problems disappear and me want to fight for those kids. That was the main drive in all that, and I felt very humbled. And I hate it happened to them, but I was so happy that I could be a part of it with them. And one of the moms has 10 kids, 4 children with Down syndrome. They adopted them internationally from the Ukraine. I was so glad that she got to stay at home, have her family at home, not have to worry about that stuff, that I could go represent them to our representatives. It's just a shame that it's gotten so political that you can't get anything done unless you have an office or something backing you. And that's my drive. I hope to represent everybody like that doesn't have a voice. I hope to represent the farmers.
On the farm, I have been head of food safety audits. That's just one of my jobs. Obviously, CEO, CFO, bookkeeper, mechanic, tractor driver. I've done a little bit of everything. But part of it is when we got into the produce world, we started having to do food safety. Food Line has pushed that through we do certified SC grown with Food Lines throughout the summer. Well, local goodness is, I guess, what they call it in their stores. But through that, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, through food safety. A lot of things I think farmers have been doing, but not necessarily, keeping the records. Being able to traceability. They can call me from a store at Food Line, and I can track it back to the field or set of rows where it was harvested. So I've really enjoyed that learning process, but it is important for consumers that we can sell safe products. We have the healthiest stuff in the world. I guarantee the stuff that we're bringing in from overseas does not require the same amount of food safety as what we require from our farmers here at home. So knowing that our food is safer, we should be promoting that. We should be emphasizing, hey, this is the food that we should be selling. It's healthy for our kids. We should put more of it in schools. We should be putting more of it on menus in restaurants. But, along those lines, also, I feel like I know how to speak to the General Assembly. In 2015, we did have the flood. Our governor decided that, she met with her in Manning there, and she said, we can't afford for the farmer to fail. And I agree with her there. A few weeks later, she had changed her mind. She turned down federal funds. We had lost $376 million in 2015 because of flood. And someone in her ear who didn't know jack squat about agriculture convinced her that we didn't need the money. So she turned down money that's appropriated from D.C. to save agriculture. So after that, I like, you know what? There's no voice in Columbia for farmers. There's no one who truly understands what happens at the farm level. There's no one who understands rural America. So took some time off from the farm, went to Columbia several days, got to speak before House Ways and Means. I testified before Senator Tim Scott's field hearing. And we educated the General Assembly, hey, we have to do something. We had to make a difference. We had to save the farm. And we were able to override Governor Hayes' veto in 2016, and we secured $40 million for our farmers.
So, I always tell people Amick Farms, we were a federally inspected facility, but size-wise, I tell people that we dealt with every government agency known to man except for NASA. And I was convinced one day NASA was going to show up and say, hey, what are you doing to the moon? I mean, it was everything from USDA, Department of Labor, National Labor Relations Board, because we had 2 union facilities, EEOC, OSHA. We dealt with DEA. We used ammonia in the cooling system in the plant, and ammonia can be used to make drugs. So they show up with a badge and a gun, and they want to look at your records. Dealt with every agency here in the state, whether it was DSS, whether it was Department of Revenue, whether it was SHAC. My first year at Amick Farms, it was about after the first year, Mr. Amick, who was just a wonderful man, and again, gave me lots of opportunity, called me down to his office, and he said, hey, I want you to go down to the State House, and I want you to get this bill passed. And I said, Mr. Amick, I've never been in the State House. And he said, look, here's the deal. I want you to go down there. I want you to talk to these people, but you always tell the truth. You're going to build a relationship by telling the truth. And that's the valuable lesson I learned right off the bat with these agencies is you have got to be a truth provider. If they want to know how a chicken's killed or what we do with this or what we do with that, you've got to be able to tell them the truth. A lot of that goes back to kind of my bent that in general in business is relationships. You've got to build them. You can't wait till there's a crisis. They've got to know your name. They've got to know who you are. I've done that at the State House. There's a group of folks down there that know who I am, and they know they can call me, and they know kind of where I stand. I've done it at the federal level, dealing with USDA directly, serving on several associations. The Commissioner of Agriculture role interacts with just about every government agency known to man, except for NASA. So I think it's a key piece of leadership that you're going to have to be able to do to build those relationships for the future, right? You cannot wait till it's a problem. You got to start building those relationships. That's true in D.C. That's true at the State House. A lot of that comes down to this. You got to be present, right? You can't sit in that office. You got to be around these folks and show it matters. You got to walk in that State House. And I used to spend a lot of time there just being there, right, to be around them. So when those questions pop up, I'm just right there for them. Same thing with the commissioner. I think you got to be there. You got to be at USDA. You got to look at the trade issues that we're having, right? There's a fair amount of South Carolina products that are traded to exported to other countries. That's a relational opportunity. Your bigger countries, it's not a big deal. They don't necessarily get caught up in relations, but your smaller countries really want to have a relationship with who they are buying products from. So it's something I've experienced a lot. Some of it was fun, some of it was horrible. It's interesting to see the change in administration. So going from a Republican to a Democrat, or a Democrat to Republican, or even a different person in the White House, you'll see a change in the way those agencies act and how they behave. And you've got to be really good with a leader of trying to figure out that business environment, because that's what that is. It's a change in the business environment. And how can you do the best thing for our state?
Okay, Jeremy, you start on this one. It's from Danny. Over the last few years, cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, has been confirmed in many of our private and public waterways, killing many farmers' livestock and loved pets. What will you do to combat this and see that South Carolina has safe water for future generations?
La problema en este estado es nadie puede hablar con alguien de las cosas que está en los problemas y tiene muchas cosas. Nadie entiende ninguna cosa. Nadie entiende nada. And that's what's going on here. We have a communication issue in our state.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yes. Well, it was Spanish, but I would say that is what we're facing throughout our state. People are speaking different languages. People don't understand the language, or they're not speaking at all. Our biggest issue, I would say, is a lack of communication. Obviously, the blue-green algae issue has been something serious for Danny Ford with his cows. But there's agencies that are not communicating, and they did not do a good job of communicating after Helene. Now, I witnessed this firsthand in 2024. We had a serious drought, another one of those, terrible years of the last 10 as farming there at home. On week 9, we had an inch and 3/10 of rain. We were in D3 status in our county, which opens up the federal funds. I talked with my Clemson extension agent. I said, what is the SCDA doing about our issue? What are they saying? What are they talking about? She says, I haven't heard anything. I said, well, don't you think that they should be saying something, trying to help out, at least make the issue known, either at the state level or the federal level? Someone needs to do something. Well, she said, well, let me call my contact in Columbia with SCDA. And that contact told her we didn't know anything about it. To my reply is, what is your job? What are you doing? Why do you exist as an agency? And that's where we are with multiple agencies. We have tax-funded agencies not doing their job, not protecting the consumer, not promoting the consumer, not protecting the farmer, not promoting agriculture, and they're definitely not talking. And the languages they're using might as well be Spanish, because no one understands each other, and no one understands what's going on at the farm level, and no one's helping. It is an issue, but it needs to be to a place where when it is identified, everyone, it's a state issue. We're protecting farmers. We're protecting cattle, animals, everyone. We're protecting the humans. You got what, a day or two, and they're dying. It is a serious issue, and we're gonna have to talk to get it fixed.
So we were at a forum last night, and when Jeremy started speaking Spanish, in my head I was going, man, I've had too many Diet Cokes. Something just changed, man. I loved it. I think this is a good example of going back to the other question about your interaction with government agencies. And I hate to say this, but they're never going to be perfectly aligned and perfectly situated, right? Everything has a bureaucracy, a church, a home, this organization. So bureaucracy isn't necessarily bad. It's when it becomes the leader of what you're doing that it becomes bad. So you see these agencies sometimes just be disconnected in what they're doing. For example, the General Assembly broke up DHEC. Right, it was too big. They did everything from nuclear power plants to chicken houses. Made no sense. They broke it up. So they took the environmental piece and created a Department of Environmental Services. So it really does the permitting piece, the environmental piece. And in my year and a half, I worked for the department for about a year and a half. And I was the agricultural liaison to the Department of Environmental Services. So I was there at least once a day. Was kind of a resource for them. And I was really surprised at how they kind of pulled me into meetings and things that sometimes I was sitting there going, I'm not sure I should be hearing this. But it was nice because they knew that, again, I was going to be a guy that presented truth. So if they had a question about ag or what this is really all about, that I was going to tell. So I think it goes back to that other question about the commissioner has got to be somebody who is coordinating with and pulling in other agencies to be on the team, right? Things just naturally start to pull away. It's just the way humans are, and it's the way government certainly is. They're going to get in their silo, and they're going to focus on their silo. So I think when I think about this issue of clean water, and specifically about Lee's issue, I think it's something we've got to have enough relationship with the agency in the state, or even the EPA, whatever the issue is at the higher level. We've got to have that relationship to really pull people in and make sure we know what's going on. The other piece that I would say is there's some things in our state that don't necessarily, well, they're unique. For example, our state vet does not report to the Department of Agriculture. We're one of 2 states in the nation that's the way that is. It reports up through Clemson, which isn't evil. It's not necessarily bad. It just requires a leader who can go pull those things back to us, right? Pull groups together. Goes back to leadership. How do you lead people? You always want to say, who do we need at the table? Who are the best people to have at this table that we can start making decisions and solving problems in the best way possible? So I think for me, there's a lot of issues that again are going to require the next commissioner, if we're really going to help things and kind of take some of these issues that really just pull and they create issues that pull you away from the major thing you're really trying to do. We're going to have those relationships that ag is at the table and we're at their table. We're sitting down with them. We know what's going on, and we have the opportunity to share with them, hey, wait a minute, this is a big deal. We need to focus on this.
Danny?
I'm going to try to stay on the water portion of it, not get after that. But there's 1 million ponds, man-made ponds in South Carolina. Nobody's responsible for those but the landowner. I don't know how educated y'all are about water, but when I got into it, I was not very educated. It was a deep dive and took a lot of learning. Right now, if there's a bloom, if there's anything and it's in a public waterway, that's taken to the Department of Environmental in South Carolina. They have ELISA testing. They're able to test and figure out exactly how many parts per million is in that water. Clemson has an extension. They will do testing for you. That is more them looking under a microscope to see if it's present. There's human error there. So we have to have ELISA testing for the farmers. It's one more thing that we forgot about for our farmers. You know, they're exactly right. The agencies do not speak well together. It's hard to get a livestock person and a water person on the, they're in 2 different departments. It's just naturally they don't cross well. But right now, there's not even testing methods to figure out if that's what killed your dog, cat, cow. You have to test the water. When I had my incident, that was not even known. They told us to figure it out through the cow, and that's impossible. There's grants out right now to a lot of different schools to figure out how to do that through fish. But we have to have the ELISA testing. It's been since 1998 since we've had any more environmental or water safety updates to any bills in Columbia. So it's been almost 20-something years. I mean, we have to start looking at that, especially when you talk about all the silt that washed down. Y'all seen in Greenwood right now, the big fish kill? Tons of fish dying. Nobody knows what's happening in the water. All right, our bloom happened in May the 1st last year. McCormick had a bloom in November, the end of November, almost December. So that is very, very odd. Nobody's ever seen that before, that stretch. It's usually a June, July, August issue where it gets really hot. And I was talking to some friends the other day, and they're already starting to deal with it. Just like I said, in Greenwood, they've had the big fish kill. So we have to have these testing capabilities at the Department of Agriculture to where people can test their water. We can learn about it. I tell people it's a lot like a mushroom. There's algae out there that are very good, and there's algae out there that'll slap kill you. So it's just like that. And we have to start doing the research on those things and getting water samples to when we see death. I mean, that's a very common thing. How many cows do you need to die or animals before you take a water sample? Once again, the Department of Environmental takes care of the lakes. They do a pretty good job. They work it pretty hard. I noticed that. They did us some favors. But for the farmer, there's absolutely no representation through the water.
And Fred, we're back to you at the end of the line. And the question is from Jeremy. What would you do to add markets to South Carolina?
So I think the couple pieces. One would be again, recruit. That's your biggest move. There's never a silver bullet, right? So you're always having to figure out what things do I need to do. I think the first thing is to recruit, to bring those here. I think the second thing would be I think we've got to do a better job of connecting to our farmers and finding out what they want. Right? Every farmer's different in how they want to do their business or what they're after or what they're thinking about or what they wish for. So I think we've got to connect more with, hey, what industry would you want here? What agribusiness would you want here? Is it another poultry operation? For example, chicken, the biggest part of the bird's diet is corn and soybean, right? And at AMIC, we bought about 55% of our corn was local. So it was a big impact to the local farmers who were growing corn. Is that what somebody wants? Do they want more opportunities in the produce side? The biggest gap you see in a lot of produce type operations is the storage and distribution, right? You're sometimes having to use a distributor who has a cold storage to keep things cool and then to distribute it around places. Are there ways to kind of build that infrastructure, that ecosystem that a farmer can begin to make their choices about their business? I just think I'm a capitalist, so I like having choices. I think when you have one plant or one processor or one market, that's called a monopoly, right? And I don't like that. So I think I'm very focused on creating multiple markets, finding, and again, it goes back to building relationships that you start seeing things. There was a feed mill I went to down in Georgia, and the guy has a non-GMO corn feed mill. It's food grade, and he's selling to your Nestle's, your cereal manufacturers, because this MAHA movement, that's not policy, it's just a movement, is actually shaping businesses because they want to make the decision before the government tells them what to do. If anybody says the customer's not king, let me tell you that's not true. I've seen it in food, I've seen it in restaurants. The customer is always king. It may take time, but right now you're seeing a big push towards a change in that food. What he wants to do, and going down there and really looking at his operation, what we began to talk about was the cereal manufacturers want to move away from fructose and go back to sugar. Sugar requires a carrier to stick with the product. The best carrier is non-GMO soybean flour. He actually wants to build one of those here in South Carolina. And again, that's a market that's different than your regular GMO soybean, and it's different than sending it overseas. It's different than sending it to a crush plant. But I want that farmer to be able to make that choice. It's a higher price product, so you can make a little money on it, but it's a different way of kind of doing what you're doing. So I think the key to me is to create opportunities in the state. First thing is recruiting. Second thing is to connect to what's here and find out what the business people, what the agribusiness people really want.
Gentlemen, we have given an equal amount of questions and everybody's answered an equal amount. And because of when the library closes and the amount of time we need to shut down, I'm going to go to the 5-minute closing remarks now. And anything you want to bring up now that hasn't been covered in the questions, would like to have got to the one more question from each of you, but time restraints and being able to tear their stuff down and get out of here by the time the library would like us to get out. Run a little longer than I anticipated. I apologize for that. But you've got 5 minutes each to.
These two gentlemen, 1 minute Because it's really unfair to not answer it at all. Can y'all do that?
Oh, I'm, yes. I jumped in too quick.
So you're gonna let us get our time, but then you were
Yeah, yeah, and then do the 5-minute closing.
Danny, you're up.
That was a lot, so ask the question one more time. Markets, is that right?
What would you do to add markets to South Carolina? And forgive my
No, you're
senior
fine.
moment.
I'm one of the, I don't want to move markets into South Carolina. I don't want big ag in here. I've had enough of them. I've watched Pet put our dairies out of business. I've watched Monsanto's kill our row croppers, and I've watched the big four kill our beef industry. I don't want that. I want to see community cohesion. I want to see us support the farmer. I want to cut the red tape for the farmer to be able to produce for these people. Right now, it's not like that. How does your food system work? Some of y'all know that in here, but some of you don't. If you're a chicken farmer, you're contracted, it's brought in, it's grown for 7 weeks, it's loaded up on a truck, and it's shipped right back out. When it ships out of the state, that's when our tax dollars stop for the state of South Carolina. It's the same with cows. Whenever we grow cows to a certain weight, we take them to sale barn, they put them on a truck, they ship them out west, they feed them, and then they freeze all of it and they bring it back to us. You want to know why your roads are torn up? It's not from y'all riding around in little cars. It's 80,000 pound loads running up and down the highway. So the system that we have grown, I like to look at it as we're eating glorified TV dinners. There's so much better out there. We can give our chefs so much better to work with. Our kids can have so much better food. Anybody ever seen the 100 Years of Lunch on YouTube? If you go look at it, you see exactly how it changed through the years. In 1920s, they were hurting, so they didn't have certain things. They added proteins in the 40s. They got to 80s and 90s, and everything became processed and garbage. I would like to see our kids be healthier than we were. Our convenience is killing us. Going to have all these different things that are shipped out of the state, brought back in. 68% of our food comes from international imports. That's heavy in preservatives. It's frozen. We want fresh food for our people. And it's just like when we were talking earlier, if somebody gets to be the president, I can't do anything if it's all the way across the country. I can't do anything if it's international. If it's made in South Carolina and it's produced in South Carolina for consumers, we don't have to worry about who the president is. We don't have to worry about whatever other country does. All it is about protecting our consumers and our farmers. And that's what I want to see happen. I'm so tired of seeing us get our margins cut by these couple of companies. I mean, really, you have a company out there that you buy corn from and it blows across the road. And so you can't produce corn in South Carolina and sell it to farmers anymore because they're going to essentially have to still pay Monsanto's. Somebody dropped the ball on that bad. I mean, that is not a good thing. It put more seed companies out of business in the United States than anything else.
2015, we had the flood. 2016, we had Hurricane Matthew. And also, so they were just devastating for us. Either one of them independently would have been devastating as for farmers. But also in 15, we hit another whammy. We lost Bay Valley Foods. It was our cucumber buyer. As I mentioned earlier, we were growing pickled cucumbers. We were growing 1 million pounds of pickled cucumbers every year for Bay Valley Foods and shipping them to North Carolina. Obviously, with decline of labor and other things, they decided in 2015 that if we couldn't guarantee them 500 acres in South Carolina, they were pulling out. They said it's not feasible. There's no way it's going to work. And in July of 15, they left. That was huge for us. It was something we counted on for 30 years and something a lot of farmers counted on for 30 years. Well, we had, like I said, we had the flood, hurricane in the December of 16. Daddy and I sat in the office and there's no way we can overcome these losses with corn and soybeans. No way. Tobacco was on the downside trend. Cucumbers was gone. He's like, we got to get cucumbers back. We got to. So I said, well, I'll get them back. I'll find a buyer. I got on the internet, back when you could trust Google a little bit, and found a buyer in Ohio. It's Hartung Brothers. and found a number, called him up, and got on the phone. One of the brothers, his name was Daniel Hartung. And I said, Daniel, I need you to buy Carolina cucumbers. I said, we've been doing it for 30 years. I know what the land's capable of. I know what the farmer's capable of. I know we can do it. They are the best in the world. Little did I know that we also had a distinct advantage, and we still have it because South Carolina hadn't moved. Because of 95, we have a huge advantage over our competitors, Alabama, Mississippi, whatnot, Louisiana, to the northeast. We should be killing it, and we're not. But so I said, I need you to buy. He said, well, I don't buy cucumbers. I do have the Vlasic contract, but I got a guy in Canada that buys all of them. His name is Jamie Underhill. I'll give you his number. If you can convince him to buy them, then I'll take the cucumbers. And I said, okay. Called Jamie. And Jamie said, went through the same reel. I said, I know what we can do. I know what we're capable of. He said the same thing Daniel said. You sound like you know what you're talking about, and I want to take a flyer on it. I'll tell you what, if you'll fly to Canada and convince me, then I'll buy some cucumbers. So I flew to Canada out of Charleston, flew up there, spent the day with him, talked with him, same conversation. That next morning, I flew back home from Canada with a 160-acre cucumber contract for South Carolina cucumbers. That was in 17. In 18, it was 500 acres. And last year, it was almost 3,000 acres. It was $5 million of revenue for our farmers in our state.
Thank you. Thank all three of you for coming and doing this. And I apologize for jumping in too quick a while ago. But now if you would...
My question was essentially the same one as his, so it's not going to hurt anything.
I don't remember mine, so it doesn't matter.
But apparently I'm forgetting a good bit too, so we're on an even keel. I've done these so many times, there's no excuse for me screwing up like that. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
But we started at Danny and ended with Fred, so we start back with Danny to do the 5-minute closing remarks. And like I said,
I was hoping somebody else would go first since I went first altogether. That's not an option.
No, you didn't. You went first. He went first. He went first.
Okay.
And it's back to you.
All right.
If Fred went first this last question, then it's back on your end.
I got a 1 and a 4-year-old. I don't want to leave them in this mess. You know, I don't understand why more people aren't getting involved. They're going to look at us one day and wonder what we were doing. It's our job, it's our duty to create this place that we want our kids to grow up in. Right now, we're not doing a good job. We've got development, we've got the solar panels, got the data centers. My kid is 2% of people providing for 98% of consumers because I'm a farmer. My kid's got a chance at farming with struggles. Somebody's that is coming up and has no idea about farming doesn't have a shot. I wouldn't have had a shot if I was him. We have to create a way for them to sustain themselves in the future. It is national security. I think as the government, especially our state government, we can pick up some of that responsibility and help the farmers and see to that. All this happened is Brazil has come in and essentially seen what we're doing and taken over. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the lumber business. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the food industry. They own so much of it. All the mills, 13 in South Carolina and around this move to Brazil. They're doing eucalyptus trees down there on a 7-year rotation. They have a level playing field for their people. We're the ones that are hurting our farmers. That's why I see we build this system the way we all grew up, the way we all knew. We come back to counting on our farmers and through our community. It's just like when cotton was big. Our cotton produced for the textile mills. The textile mills supported our cotton farmers. It's not that hard of a thing to figure out. I mean, we're taking these other people and we're giving them all the profit while our farmers are killing them. I mean, you talk about, I had a friend say, you know, you turn around and go buy a John Deere tractor, 4100R or something, and, you know, it cost you $150,000. If you turn around and buy those parts and put that tractor together, you're going to have $750,000 to $1 million in that tractor. They have figured out how to make money on the farmer at every turn. We are completely dependent on the system as farmers. We have to break the dependency. We have to come together as a community. We have to support our farmers. And just like I said on that app, you won't put one thing up on that app that a farmer can see that they can produce and not see it produced. We think we got it licked if we can find a buyer. We don't have buyers now. We sit there and speculate morning and night. Is it going to rain? Is there a buyer? All these different things. So I like all these guys. They're all good guys. We've traveled around, and just like they say, it's the first time I've said it, we could probably do each other's speech. You know, what we have right now, though, is a system that is unapproachable. I've tried. You know, I've gone to government and asked for help. I've gone to government asked for clarification. You've got to be here. You've got to see the people. You've got to be approachable. None of this can't get a hold of the commissioner. You've got to be. I mean, I like the guy in Georgia. I think it's very outspoken. I look up to him and what he's done. You know, that's the kind of commissioner I want to be. I want to go speak for farmers and speak the truth and give y'all an opportunity to be competitive. Right now, I think South Carolina, through the labeling and everything else that they have in South Carolina, I think it's one of the hardest states to produce in for our farmers to get stuff from the farm to the consumer. It should be the easiest. I want schools to put farming kids out in agriculture, and they say, I want to move to South Carolina because they're doing it in farming. It's not like that now. It wasn't like that when I grew up. I grew up, wanted to go rodeo, had to go out west. That's not a good thing. We can be on the cutting edge. We have the climate, the resources, everything right here in South Carolina. You go right to the coast. You can grow there 12 months a year. Come up and on up to where you can produce peaches and everything else. I mean, it's the perfect state for us to come together, support our farmers, and put our kids back in a place where they can become successful. But you have to have somebody that cares enough to come talk to you, to speak to you, and you to be able to approach them.
Chairman?
This system is broken. It is broken. Anyone who says that we're doing a good job for our farmers, for our timber people, for our citizens is out of the loop, is living in a bubble. So who do you want going to fight for you in Columbia? Who do you want going to fight for you in D.C.? I've done both. Who do you want to go approach other businesses or buyers and convince them to come? Because I've done that too, but it takes knowing the language. It takes living it. It takes experiencing it. It takes just the knowledge of what our state is capable of, what our farmers need, what our timber guys need. Sometimes it takes thinking outside the box. Right now, we are living in a status quo society. We have a set number of things you can plant. You have a few places you can sell it, and they tell you what price you get. And very seldom does anything that we grow get sold to someone in our state. We have to work on infrastructure. We have to work on markets. Those things are sustainable. What we're doing right now is not sustainable. There's no way that we're going to make it into the next decade unless something changes. We can't keep voting status quo. We can't keep operating the same way. Things have to change. I've lived it. I've experienced it. All I've done for 45 years has been on that farm. My farm, my neighbor's farms. I've been all over the state traveling. I've talked with a lot of people. I've lived a long life of experiences, hard knocks. I know that the system, because of the system, I've learned how to grow everything in the state that you can lose money on. If anybody needs to know how to lose money on a crop or what crop, I can give you a whole list and how much you can lose. It is extremely difficult to sit in a meeting in January. They were 2 days apart. One of them was the peanut meeting, one of them was the cotton meeting. But they showed a statement of cash flows on the screen, and all of them's negative. But that's what they've asked us to do because that's the system that they built. It is an establishment system. They don't want things to change because we're always at their mercy. We're not living a life where we can thrive as a society. I do miss the pizza I had in high school. But I wish we'd get back to that. I'm sure it wasn't healthy, but but it was good. But there's opportunities for us to grow 90% of the things we eat here. But the system is broken. It's keeping us from doing it. We're going to have to work on infrastructure and markets and cold storage. One thing I've faced, even on our farm, Duke wanted $36,000 to bring power to our farm to run a cooler. No help from our government. Just the air compressors, the condensers and evaporators was $50,000. Obviously, that's $86,000. Who can do that? In the last 10 years of losing money, through floods and hurricanes and what have you, droughts, and we're facing one right now. We're in D3 drought status again. But we have no help. We have to change programs that incentivize people to buy local, programs that help farmers be sustainable, to make a crop, to be able to save that crop and sell it for a profit. I've done everything that I feel like a commissioner has to do. I've spoken to the General Assembly in Columbia. I've lobbied in D.C. I've helped bring a market here. But you have to know the language. You have to be able to speak it. And you have to be able to speak it in a way that they can understand. And that's the only way they're going to help you. I did that as a farmer. I did it on a farmer dime. I felt like I shouldn't have to do it. I feel like that's what the commissioner's job is. But I did it because I had to. And now I'm running because we're in that same place where we need help in our state, and I'm the guy for the job. Thank you.
So I think the rules, Mr. Moderator, is if I mention their names, they get 3 minutes. So if they mention my name, I get 3 minutes. So we can keep going all night long, just back and forth and back and forth.
We could adjourn to the parking lot.
I'd like to apologize to the voters in the room because you deserve the right to see all the candidates speak at one time. I called for debates months ago because this is a critical issue. We are at a critical point, and this is a serious job. And the reality is these guys, that basically anywhere, anytime, we'll get together. And I'm thankful that they're in the race. I'm thankful that they care enough to not only chase after something to try to help ag, but they're willing to sit in front of voters and explain themselves. Iron sharpens iron, right? So I think that's a key thing that I tried to do from last year was to put myself in front of people, get tough questions, talk about what I would do, and beat that up, right? The debate issue in business, critical debate is the way you make good decisions in business. I learned it quickly. If there was somebody sitting and nobody said anything, I'm saying somebody has to argue with this because we got to make sure in what we're doing. So, again, I apologize. I think it's important for us to put ourselves out here. This is not a Facebook position. It's not about friends or followers. It's not even about how many events you do, right? I saw people in business that looked really busy, but what were they working on that mattered, right? You got to do the right things. You got to pick the right. That's what a good leader does, is they put themselves, they're present at the right places. And I think right now the right place for us is in front of voters, so that they can ask questions, that they can see things go on. So I'd say this, the role is a constitutional office. That means everybody in this room is making a hiring decision. It's not by appointment. It's not by endorsement. It's not by birthright. It's not by what your family does. It's not a coronation. You're hiring an executive to run this agency. And in my career, I've hired thousands of people, literally. And you learn really quickly, you don't hire based off the title. You hire based off the job description. And when you go through that process, you look at things like a recommendation from somebody, which is very similar to endorsement. That's just a data point, right? You don't let that make your decision. You still have to look at the candidate and the experience and the skills and say what matches up with the job description, who's going to do the best job for us. Agriculture in this state is at a crossroads. It's got two places to go, either better or much worse. There's no such thing as flat in business. If anything in business is flat, any number you have in business is flat, it's declining. You don't stand still. So we're at that place that I think a lot of things are going to have to change, right? It's a different environment. There's a lot more things coming at farmers. So I want to encourage you as you go through this process to look at who's putting themselves out there. Because if we don't put ourselves out here now to answer tough questions and get beat up some and pushed in a corner, are we going to do that when we get the job? You start to look at those type things when you're hiring somebody. How do they act when they walk in the room? What do they say? Are they uncomfortable in even engaging in deep conversation about the issues of the job they would take? I believe the agency is a complex business. $60 million a year budget, over 250 people. Lots of different pieces, parts, and moving parts. It's a complex, chaotic agency. I think it requires an executive with experience who's run something complex and chaotic. I'm the only candidate that has decades of experience as an executive. But again, my hope in this process that we walk through, that all of us give you the opportunity to make a good decision as the hiring manager, hiring the next chief executive for the Department of Agriculture. I really appreciate the time. This was good. We enjoyed it. And I'm not going to mention anybody's name because I know we're on time thing, so we'll be done. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank all three of you for, a couple of you made a pretty long, Danny didn't have to drive too far, but the rest of you made
I did last night.
Yes, you did.
About 5 hours last night.
I do appreciate you sitting up here for an hour and a half, answering questions and sharing your views. I do appreciate it, and I'm sure these guys do. One more time, give them a hand. And with that, our next town hall, where you'll get to ask questions, will be at Mutts on May the 7th with candidate for governor, Alan Wilson. So come eat some barbecue and ask a hard question. That's what we're here for. Educate the voters. Thank you all for coming. Oh, thank you.